You just got out of jail where you had an experience with Jesus, but now you're on the street ignoring that call. But now the cry of these parents is calling out, and God is saying, today is your last chance to change. And we would find out the next day that that man was shot 17 times that night. He was a crack cocaine addict and a dealer, and he was now selling to the kids. And the cry of that neighborhood parents and grandmothers and aunts against him had risen up. And the Lord allowed him to be taken away so that a generation could be saved. And I groaned and grieved finding out that information. In fact, I think we found out late that night. But I awakened on April 19th, 1995 to find out, Michael, that we had come across a threshold in America. I wouldn't know until later on in the day. I woke up about 9:03, 9:04 in the morning and woke up angry and crying, with tears coming down my face, and I began looking around, and I thought, why am I angry? What's going on? I prayed for a few minutes, got out of bed, and we went to clean off this tent that we'd pulled out the day before. And it was a big red and white striped tent with a big red cross on the top of it. And as we were cleaning this off with Clorox to get rid of the debris and the algae and the molds, things that grow on tents when they're put away, we cleaned it all off. And then about 4 o'clock that afternoon, we visited a man's house. And when we got there, he said, "Did you hear about the bombing?" And I said, "What bombing?" And he said, "In Oklahoma City." And I said, "I haven't even heard that there was a bombing." I said, "Where was it?" My heart stopped because my parents lived in Edmond, Oklahoma. Wow. My dad worked in Guthrie, about 35 miles north of Oklahoma City, and my mom worked in the federal building. He said, "Well, the federal building." And my heart sank, and I said, "Which one?" Quickly trying to think in my mind, well, there's a federal courthouse, there's a federal building, yes. He said, "Well, both, I think." And so we watched the news. We turned on the news immediately, and I began to watch it. I wasn't watching television, didn't know what was going on, hadn't had time for the radio. We're just going about our business. And that afternoon, my wife at a Chinese restaurant, she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "A storm has hit America." And she said, "Well, is it physical or is it spiritual?" And I said, "Both." And it was right then that the storm was hitting Oklahoma City and quenching the smoke and the fire. And that storm came in, it rolled in on that Tuesday. It still went Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. And we began to just pray and intercede. We couldn't get through the telephone lines. Everything was jammed, chaos everywhere. And finally I thought, I'm going to call my dad. And I got on my knees and I called out to God. And immediately the hand of the Lord showed me that he had reached down from heaven and scooped up my mom and brought her to him, put her down at his feet, and I saw her with her arms up praying. And suddenly I saw the Lord saying no, and I realized that she wasn't coming back. And so I just resolved to get in the car. We drove to Oklahoma City in a thrashing rainstorm, and I'd had a prophetic word 2 weeks before that said, get ready, just get ready. You're going to go to the nations. Your testimony is going to go to the nations of the world. And it was at that time, I had no passport at that time. It was at that time that a man walked up to me from England and said, "Look, I'd like to do an interview. I heard your mom's in there and you're a minister." And I said yes. And so within a few minutes of doing that interview that night, we went around the world. We went to McNeil, Lear Report.